It's crazy how all-encompassing stand-up is. Like, once you start, it fucks every single other thing that you've been trying to achieve.
Well, because you're just all in.
Yeah, and also all your clips, it's like, who's going to hire you when you're talking about dicks?
Yeah, exactly.
For 5 minutes.
Oh, so you've seen my clips. Beautiful. You've seen my my closer. It's good to see you. I'm glad you got your bag back.
Yes, thank you so much.
No,
you're so
very,
sweet,
very
man.
welcome. No, that's okay. Listen, Anisa, no pronunciation, I go in cold, because I don't think we covered this last time. Nandaula.
Daula.
Daula, see?
Yeah.
You know what? We take a chance. The least professional interviewer of all time. Anisa Nandaula. Daula. I just forgot it immediately.
Daula.
Daula, that's right, of course.
It's like, Nan, can I have a Daula?
I'm going to put, like, they have the little pronunciation
Yes.
thing above it. We've met...
Is there something on that paper? Okay.
Oh, there is. Some nice dot points. We met, must have been start of the year, maybe last year even. It's been a while.
Yeah, last year.
But we gigged together. I gave you a lift home. You left the bag in the car, and we couldn't contact each other. And I just left the bag behind a bin in a residential area, and I was messaging a fellow comic like crazy, being like, you got to let her know that her bag is behind a bin.
So sweet.
And it was a weird moment because it looks like a bomb threat.
Yeah.
Because a random guy in a suburb just put a bag behind a bin and just left.
And it's a majority brown people suburb as well, isn't it?
What's the suburb? What was that?
I don't know, but I was walking around, I was like, there's a lot of people of color here.
Sure, yeah, okay, right.
There's so many.
So I dropped the bag off, and I was relieved. Eventually you let me off the hook and said, no, thank you so much, you got the bag.
So sweet.
You're here, you didn't lose all your prized possessions in that, but I'm glad we actually get to sit down and have a chat because doing the research, it's fun. This is a fun job for me because I meet comics, I feel like I make a little connection. I like them. I like their energy in them on stage. And then I get to dive in and do because it would be so weird for me to do all this looking into you if I wasn't going to interview you. But now I get to know you a little bit better. But born in Uganda in 2001, moved to Australia when you're 8 years old in Rockhampton, Queensland. Now, I don't have the context of Rockhampton, so I went and Googled, is Rockhampton a good place to live? Rockhampton's tourism said, this is the best place on earth to live. It's beautiful, it's safe, it's incredible. Then I scrolled down and I came across the Australian crime rates page, and then I looked at Rockhampton. They've got a lot of statistics on there. They were saying there's a lot of theft, there's a lot of things going on in Rockhampton, in Kalapa.
Kalapa.
Kalapa? They were saying Kalapa's dodgy. What's your experience of Rockhampton? Did you like The Rock?
The Rock. Well, I got there when I was so young, and I was just so excited to be in Australia.
Right.
But after a couple of days there, I was like, oh, this isn't what I saw on TV.
Yeah.
This place is weird.
Right.
Because where I was living, it was like the country. Like from your house to the mailbox is like 100-meter walk. All the houses.
You were actually quite out. You went in the burbs. You were.
Yeah, not really in the burbs. All the houses were like 100 meters away from each other. So it was weird. It's not. They weren't the whites that I saw on the television that I was excited to meet.
Where are the beautiful whites?
Where are the good
You got the disgruntled, angry whites. You were like, these ain't the whites that I want.
No. I remember when I was leaving Rockhampton, vividly, I told my dad, I was like, roll down the windows. I want them to see me leave this place.
Oh, that's so funny. So you got the disgruntled whites out in Rockhampton. You're there at 8. And your journey to comedy is a little bit different to most comics that I've interviewed and come across in the fact that you started with the spoken word.
Yes.
You started with poetry and spoken word competitions, and you didn't just throw in a couple of haikus. You were smashing it. You were winning competitions. You were doing well, and then you eventually transition out of that. Well, maybe not so much out of that, but you take comedy in under your wing as well in around 2020. What brought you to stand-up comedy?
What brought me to stand-up was peak COVID. I lost all my work, and poetry was my primary source of income.
Right.
That's how I paid my rent. So when I lost all my work, I was like, I've got nothing else to do.
Pause. You can get paid for poetry?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like nodding like, yeah, there's some cash in poetry.
Yeah, there is some cash.
Really?
Especially because it's such a small niche industry. There's very few people that do it. So once they're like, this is our guy, you're the person.
Wow.
Who gets booked for everything.
And this is, I'm just going in as a complete layman. I have no education in this area, but what were you in a specific? Were you really good with like a certain type of poetry? What was your bread and butter? Yeah,
so I was a slam poet. So people would book me for performances, conferences, just anything performance based. That was my thing. So yeah, I just tour around Australia performing, like stand up basically.
Yeah, and what is slam poetry like? Is it because slam is such an aggressive term?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're laying it on them. Would you improv it or would it be prepared?
It would be prepared. The best way I would describe it is imagine a 1 hour theater play condensed in 3 minutes. So,
oh my goodness.
And you have to perform it and captivate people's attention within 3 minutes and just tell a story.
And how did you even start with getting into poetry? Like, who were some of your early inspirations? How did you come across poetry in your life?
I remember watching a YouTube video. Do you know Def Jam poetry?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, Def Jam poetry. Basically, a bunch of poets just get up and perform. And I remember being so touched by the performances because in school I was always told that I was, bad in English. I was not a good writer. And then I heard these poets, and I was like, I can do that.
Yes.
If that's what poetry is, I can kill that. So I just started writing and slowly started performing. And then I did a competition. I got runner-up in Australia for the slam poetry competition, and that kind of just launched me to do it professionally.
And how do you learn? Because I don't have the faintest idea about poetry, because some poems, my favourites, they rhyme.
Yeah.
There's some rhymes in there, and I go, now that's a good poem, because he rhymed white with light. I don't know, something like that. I'm just like, that's right. But then there's poetry that is beautifully touching, that has nothing to do with. So what is the mechanism going on there? How did you start to get good at it? Were you looking at YouTube tutorials? Were you reading poetry? How did you start to understand how to do poetry?
Well, it's very vague. Like, the currency of performance poetry is emotion. You just want to make people feel stuff. It doesn't matter how you do it. You just get up, 3 minutes, you make them feel things, and then you leave. So that's the beginning. I'm just going to tell my story and try to touch them. And then eventually you start to learn the mechanisms of writing, metaphors, similes, onomatopoeia, personification. But it's just about making them feel it.
Yes, the core, the heart of it is the heart. You need to connect.
Yeah.
You need to make an impression.
Like stand-up. Like, ours is laughter, but with poetry, you can see it when someone is touched.
Yes. Now, that draws parallels completely to comedy. You've had a huge advantage. Now I'm like, no, hold on, you were cheating this whole time. These are PEDs for comedy. So you've already kind of got momentum in this, this creative field where you're trying to connect with people and land something. What is that like the first time you get on stage and you do it with laughter?
Oh my God, I destroyed because there was 4 people in the audience. One was my best friend.
You destroyed with 4?
Yeah, I was killing it. And it was in a bar, and there were 3 other guys. They were laughing so hard. I think they were trying to fuck me. But I was like, I am destroing
Doesn't mean they didn't find it funny.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
That's glorious. So you get up the first time, 4 people. See, how were the nerves for that? Because if you get up first time, were you happy that it was less people, even maybe the first time?
Yeah, I was happy there was less people. I went out to a really far place. It was like 40 minutes from where I lived. And I was shaking. But when I was getting these laughs, I was like, oh my God, I'm such a natural. And then all the other 60 times I bombed. But that first time was so good.
First time is so important. You wouldn't believe that story is so common, where the comics that I fear, Anisa, are the people who bombed and never got a laugh for a long time. I'm like, why did you keep going? Why did you do it?
You're ill.
Yeah, exactly. But the people which I can relate to, if you got at least a bit of encouragement with some laughter, or someone telling you that you're really good, whatever it is, then you can kind of push through the pain ahead.
For sure.
But so you got that same story. You got some laughs. You come off. Do you remember after that first gig, getting that first crush, how you felt? And you're like, this is what I'm doing. I'm all in.
Oh my God, I felt amazing, and it was something I'd never felt before. I'd been a spoken word poet for 6 years, and if someone asked me to drive 30 minutes to perform for free, to perform a poem, I'd tell them to get fucked. But with stand-up, I was like, I'll do anything.
Yes.
I'll drive for 3 hours.
Wow.
You can insult me, I'll come back. And I've never felt that way about anything.
Mike, what an arduous journey. You'd make it in acting like that.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God. If you're willing to push through assaults, come on, you get right to the top. No.
Wait, no assault, not assault, insult.
Insult. All right, there we go. That's no, I don't let people assault me. I don't let it. Yeah, well, I thought we connected. That's all right.
You accepted that so quickly.
I was like, beautiful. You've got what it takes. No.
She's a star.
So you're all in with the comedy, and then you just go on hard at that there. And again, you're right, because that's 2020 when you first get on stage, right? And it's the midst of COVID. Here we are, 2024. I've watched your comedy before. I've had the pleasure you did the Gong Show when we were here. I've seen some of your stuff online, and it's like not only are you funny, but you have a great ability, which is rare, where I can tell that you're intellectual and you think deeply about things, but you present it in such a palatable way for the audience. Like I won't go into your bits, but there's a fantastic thing about how to tell someone's American. like that's so creative, and it's not just a joke. Do you know what I mean? Because it's you're acting it out, and there's so many elements to it. So my question is it's like how did you find your style? Like were there other comics that you were emulating that you really looked up to? Because the first time I saw you, I thought this is not just traditional stand-up. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, comics that I looked up to. I have comics that I love who I would love to be like, but
who are they? Is there any names that you really like?
Yeah, I love Kevin Hart. I love Wanda Sykes.
Yes.
I love Bill Burr, all the classics. But in terms of my style, I guess coming from poetry, I'm always performing to white audiences. And most of the time, I assume they don't like me or they're not going to like what I'm going to say. So I have to charm them all the time. Maybe it's not in Australia, specifically Queensland. It's just like charming a snake.
Yes. Playing the flute, just bringing them out of the basket.
Because I see it, like they'll be happy, and then when I get on stage, they'll be like, the blokes will be like,
come on then, Seamus, they're ready to,
yeah,
of course, and that's an essential skill, is charming an audience, even if they're not angry at you.
Yeah,
getting that skill going. Is that something that you've consciously worked on? And I know this sounds strange to people who aren't comics, but that likability is such an important part of stand-up comedies.
Oh yeah.
But then you got to balance that with being authentic. You can't be fake and just pandering to audiences. So how have you found that balance as you've gone on over the last few years?
Oh man, I had to learn the hard way, because for the first 3 to 6 months I was not likable, because I was just saying what I want as it came into my head, and the crowd hated it, like to the point where I remember I performed at this music open mic because I couldn't get any other gigs, and they banned me. I went to come back, and they're like, no, people complained. We're never going to do comedy again.
We're never going to do comedy.
Of you.
Not only you, we've cancelled the comedy.
They cancelled the art form. And after that, I was like, oh, I need to stop whatever I'm doing.
Oh, really?
And be more likable and get people on board, because I can't keep doing that.
So that's interesting. So it wasn't like I need to compromise my messaging, because you still believe in the things that you're saying, but I need to find a way to present it in a way that, like charm the snake. I need to charm the snake.
For sure, yeah.
Yes. Is there any, because I know that there's a lot of people that will be, whether they're aware of it or not, in the open mic scene, or as they're developing that, comics, what they're saying on stage is, you can tell that there is a funny core in there, but they're presenting it in a very rough way, especially in a club set. You've only got 5 minutes. They don't know who you are. They're not your best friend.
Yeah.
And you come out there and you're giving them the spicy stuff, and they're like, I don't know you. I don't trust you yet. So is there any advice that you found helpful, or anything that you did to sort of help your likability?
Ooh, help my likability.
I know it's such a gross term. It's such a gross thing. Like, how do you get people to like you more? But
I don't know. I wouldn't say my focus was on likability. It was on being funny.
Yes.
And the thing that helped me, a really good piece of advice that I got, one of my good friends said, a punchline really has to punch. Like, you have to make people laugh without them wanting to. Like, it has to be an impulse that they can't help but control. Mm-hmm. And if you have this thing that you're really passionate about, but it doesn't make people laugh uncontrollably, then it's not there yet. Yes. So just being self-conscious and being like, okay, this idea isn't there yet, but I'm going to work on it and I'll fix it.
And develop that. That's great. And with your comedy career now, I mean, I don't know what the relationship with your parents and comedy was like. Were they all for it? I mean, you were winning awards in slam poetry, so I'm sure they're like, that's the one, you go with that. And then you're like, no, I'm heading out to 40 minutes to get insulted for this gig.
Yeah, they hated it.
They hated it. Great, perfect. Have they been to a gig since?
Well, no, because my parents are Muslim.
Right.
And every event is at a bar.
Yeah, okay,
so they hate every aspect of it.
And do you speak openly about it? Do they ask you about gigs, or they just...
They tell me to stop.
They tell you to stop every time?
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't have crushed those 4 people. That was it. It was done.
I know. I shouldn't have brought my friend.
Isn't laughter such a powerful thing that your parents' disapproval is not as powerful as strangers' laughter? They gave you life.
I know.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm not saying that you're a bad daughter by any means. Keep going with this thing. But I'm saying that, like, they gave you life. They, they're like the protector. They're like, Mum and Dad, I love you. They're like, we're not proud of you. We don't like this. And you're like, well, some tradie in a pub thought I was the bee's knees. So fuck you, Mum and Dad. Like, and we keep going.
Job.
Yeah, he said
I'm never
job.
going to stop because of him.
So good. And you know what? Credit to you, because what was it then in situations where they're cancelling comedy night, they're abandoning the art form, they're like, you can't ever get up here again, and you're coming home and they're like, stop.
Yeah.
And you don't, and you keep going because you are fantastic at it. What was that if you look back at that, what was it that made you want to keep going? Because now that you're starting to tour the country and you've got momentum and you've got enough signs, if you will, from external forces that you are good at this. In the early stages when you hadn't had that, what made you want to keep going?
I think it was just knowing that there's nothing in the world that I want more than this. Like at that point, I was driving so far for gigs. I was doing it every single night. I was in law school. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to worry about law school. I'm not going to go back to poetry, which was paid very, very well. But I was willing to give anything up for this. Wow. And I'm like, I've never loved anything more than this. I've never loved a man more than this. This is...
Preach.
And if I give up on this, my life is nothing now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. The stakes are high.
Yeah.
Let's go. I love this. Burn the boats. Let's do it.
And I never had any intention to I didn't want to be famous or make a lot of money. Like, I just wanted to get up on stage.
Yes.
And get told not to come back.
Well, you know what? And again, I feel like I'm heaping on the praise, and I hope it doesn't seem disingenuous, but there's something about that. I didn't know that was your story and that was your energy, but there's something about when you come across a comic for the first time and you see them on stage, I think people can feel that. Do you know what I mean? People can feel that this means something more to you than just getting up and having your say. You know, that it's about something more. There's something... because it's such a paradox, because we do encounter comics who comedy is their whole life, but they're terrible at it as well. And
really
they're too close. They're like, I love it so much, and they're like, you need to step back a bit because you
love it less.
Yeah, love it less. You're scaring everybody.
And I find it really interesting because some comedians will be like, oh, a gig, and it's like, you don't have to be here.
Yes.
No one's forcing you to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Well, what is a good gig look like for you now? Because obviously you love this thing. What does a good gig look like for you, and what is a bad gig in your books?
Ooh, I think a good gig is where whatever I think, I say, and I allow myself to have as much fun as possible, and fun is my metric now.
That's great.
And a bad gig looks like when I don't have fun. If I say something, if I think something and then I don't say it because I'm afraid of how they'll respond.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, and that's the metric you follow now. Fun, and then bad is if I'm too full of fear.
Yeah.
That's great. And what are some goals that you have nowadays? Because obviously, it's hard. The goalposts always move. You know, we set a goal, we achieve it. That's no longer the thing. We got to keep going. What's a goal that you have now that is sort of keeping you moving towards that?
A goal that I have is for every bit to be saying something and being brave and bold enough to say something. Because I think doing stand-up in Queensland, I was so worried. Like, I really want them to like me. I just chasing the laugh, chasing the punchline. And it's like, okay, now the punchlines have to communicate a message of some sort. It doesn't have to be serious, but...
Yes. So transcend just the funny. But never leave the funny behind.
Yes.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, Anisa Nandaula, thank you so much. Is there anywhere people can find you on the social medias? Are you still doing the slam poetry? Are you still doing poetry at all?
Oh, not really.
No?
Yeah.
So just the comedy stand.
Yeah,
they can
just
enjoy
comedy.
The connection through that. Where can people find you on the social medias? And I know you have a very successful TikTok. Please promote that before it gets banned so we can get that going.
Yeah, that is ANISA _ and if you just stop there, a black face will pop up because you won't remember my last name. It's really long. Hopefully it's me and not some white dude.
Yeah, hence the guide. That was like a visual guide that an old man gives you rather than a GPS. He's like, you turn left at the dirt road, you come across the old sizzler, you turn right there. Oh, that's amazing. Well, I won't repeat what you've just said, but you know how to find her now. Anisa Nandaula, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.